The final Tuesday in June brings us to the centennial state of Colorado. Polls have not yet closed, but they will 15 minutes from now. And when they do, with a nod to the NHL team, we expect an avalanche of results very quickly that could bring clarity to races that I know if you're watching this, you know the basic setup. You have a lot of anticipation around, for instance, this race, the 1st Congressional District. Longtime Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette being challenged by Belat Quiros, Democratic Socialists of America backed candidate. This is a question here about that energy that fueled DSA-aligned candidates in New York City last week. Is it going to also be apparent in Denver? Also at the top of the hour, we're going to start to get numbers from this race. Don't know what to make of this one. This could be a blowout. John Hickenlooper, former governor, current senator, running for re-election. He could win this thing easily. Or if that energy there, again, that same sort of far-left energy that we're talking about maybe being there for Quiros in the 1st District that we've seen in some other primaries around the country, is it there statewide in Colorado? That's what Gonzalez has been trying to tap into. Also, very competitive congressional race in the 8th District. This is a Democratic primary. The winner here is going to face unopposed Gabe Evans, Republican, in November. Will be one of the most closely watched congressional districts this fall. This is a district that Trump won in 24 after losing it in 2020. Large Hispanic population. Trump had made gains with them. And of course, we're looking at the governor's race too. Here's an incumbent Senator Michael Bennet trying to become the governor, running against the state attorney general Phil Weiser. Weiser been running to Bennett's left and also trying to tap into that frustration we see in polling the Democratic voters say they have with their party's leadership in Washington. He's been trying to say that Bennett is too much of a Washington figure. So some of the headline races there, again, polls closing at the top of the hour. And just a few feet from me, when they do, helping me crunch down all of the numbers, my ace producer, Adam Naboa. Adam, are you, dare I say it, Rocky Mountain High?
You know, a lot of unknowns tonight. There hasn't been a lot of pre-election polling in these races, so I don't know. A lot of mysteries for me, and I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think everybody acknowledges going in, that would include very much DeGette's campaign and her supporters, that she's in real potential trouble here. This is a very close race. There have been some numbers there, and again, just fascinating again to see that dynamic. We were here a week ago looking at New York City, and this district, 1st District here, this is basically the city of Denver. It's not all of it, but it's a lot of it. That's basically what this district is. And demographically, you think of what we saw in New York City last week, where those socialist candidates had success, places where you had young voters, where you had renters, where you had college-educated young voters, very politically engaged and progressive. You got a lot of that in this 1st Congressional District. It's overwhelmingly Democratic. It's the core of Denver. So it worked in New York City. We saw it work at that DSA socialist movement, worked in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. mayoral primary. Is it going to happen in Denver? That's the question. And like we said, statewide in the Senate race, we call that one up here. We just don't know what to make of it. Julie Gonzalez was part of the Democratic Socialists of America. She let her membership lapse before this campaign, but has not tried to distance herself from it in a meaningful way. So I think this very much is a similar type of challenge here. We're going to see what the readout is statewide. I want to give you a sense of what to expect because looking at the clock, it's 8:48. It's blank right now. 64 counties are blank. But when 9 o'clock hits, we've had a few states like this. You know, Colorado is basically a mail-in voting state. And they've had ballots coming in for a long time. And in these states, what they do is they can take the ballots that have been coming in for the last week, the last days, often right up until today, get them ready, get them processed, get them tabulated, and they just report them out right after polls close, right at 9 o'clock. So I'll give you one example here. In 2024, Denver was the first. Denver County, I'm going to pull it up right here. City of Denver, Denver County, they're coterminous. So if I'm saying Denver City, it is Denver County. Okay, it's just the city of Denver here. They were the first. They were the first to report in 2024. They did it at 9:11 p.m., and they reported out 70% of their vote, 10 minutes after polls closed. And again, what did we just say? That 1st Congressional District is Denver. So we may get the vast majority of the vote in that hotly contested 1st Congressional District race a few minutes after 9 o'clock. Okay, so we may get, it could be clarity, or it could tell us that we got a real fight in our hands there, one way or the other in that race. And of course, other counties, other big counties, it's the same thing. 50% of the vote or more. You get in a batch there. We expect a 90-minute rush, a 90-minute avalanche, I would say, where about 3/4, maybe more of the vote statewide will come in between 9 and 10:30 Eastern. Then it slows down. It really, really tends to slow down. So this is sort of a thing where you're going to get a lot coming at you a few minutes from now. We'll make as much sense of it as we can, maybe enough to call some of these races, maybe enough to call all these races. We may get about 90 minutes in. Suddenly that tabulation slows, and we may not have clarity in any of them. That's always a possibility if they're super close. There are some other dynamics within that we can talk about, but I just want to get you ready because, again, just a few minutes from now, those polls are going to close, and this thing's going to start, as I like to say, lighting up like a Christmas tree. But we do have a few minutes. I want to also give you an announcement of what's going to happen when we're done. There it is. Look at this. We did this last week. They had so much fun with it. They wanted to do it again tonight after the results are in. Stick around because I'm going to answer questions from NBC News subscribers. So if you've got a question for me, scan the QR code. There it is. And I'm going to pause for a second because I know you got to get the phone out. You got to, it's going to take you a second. So I'm going to leave it up on the screen there. But scan that QR code. If you're unable to do that, you could go to NBCnews.com. You can go to our NBC News app. And what you do there is you subscribe. Just become one of the subscribers. We'll love you for it. You can submit a question then, and I'm going to answer a few of them tonight right here on this live stream as soon as we get all those results that we are talking about. Again, that's going to come up right after tonight. So get that QR code scanned, get the questions ready. And I think tonight, what's about to happen could raise some more questions. So maybe just watching this tonight, you're going to get some more questions coming to mind. But again, we are 8 minutes to poll close. And let me just set up one other dynamic that we're going to be looking at. I'll talk about this a million times between now and whenever we finish up. But in these Democratic primaries, we saw this in New York last week, and we've seen this in some of the others. These DSA-type candidates tend to do better with the late counted ballots. This is especially true in states with large sort of mail-in voting like you have here in Colorado. Think about that LA mayor's race, right, where what it was the late counted ballots. They were the last ones to come in, and they tended disproportionately to come from younger, politically progressive voters, right? And in that LA mayor's race, you remember that slow count of the late arriving ballots moved Spencer Pratt out of second place, put Nithya Raman into the second place, into that runoff. And so we've seen that dynamic, in other states and other places. And I think we kind of expect some version of that here tonight. So it's something to keep in mind when we get these initial numbers. Again, could be 50% of the vote, 75% of the vote in some of these counties, especially like Denver County, city of Denver. That's probably going to be the best number for a candidate like Hickenlooper, right? It's probably going to be the first number that comes out is probably going to be the best number that DeGette gets all night. And then it's going to get better from there for the progressive candidates. For the progressive candidate, again, I don't think it quite does justice to Quiros and the dynamic here, because DeGette, I think, by any conventional metric, is a progressive candidate. But Quiros is running. I mean, she's a far left candidate here. That's she's a socialist. But anyway, we expect her to do better in the subsequent updates. So keep that in mind. If we get that first initial batch and Quiros is leading DeGette, boy, you don't want to see that if you're DeGette. You want to see some kind of pad with that first update if you're DeGette. And again, to get Denver, means we're going to sort of be off and running in that Senate race. And again, I would expect the earliest numbers to be better for Hickenlooper than what would subsequently happen. In terms of where the vote's going to be coming from statewide, it is a big state. It's 64 counties, but it's actually very, very narrow. There's a handful of counties right here in the immediate Denver metro area. You're talking about Denver itself. You're talking about Arapahoe County. You're talking about Adams County. You're talking about Jefferson County. Boulder would be up here. About 70% of the vote in the statewide Democratic primary is going to come right out of here, okay? And then right up here, this is Larimer County. That's where Fort Collins is, Colorado State University. That's where they say they get 300 days of sunshine a year. That sounds pretty nice. You got Fort Collins and Larimer right here. You got Weld County right here where Greeley is. You probably got about 10% of the vote that's going to come out of those two counties. Then you can go down here, Colorado Springs. This is where El Paso County is. South of there, this would be Pueblo County, with the city of Pueblo. By the way, Pueblo County, large Hispanic population. It's the only county in Colorado that Trump flipped to him, that Trump was able to flip to his side in 2024. Had been Biden 20, Trump flipped Pueblo County with that large Hispanic population in 24. Again, probably about 10% of the vote is going to come out of these two. So 70, 80, 90% of the vote is really going to come out of this right in here. Okay, then you got the Eastern Plains, this are small counties here, very Republican counties. The Western Slope, you have a little bit out here, Mesa County, where Grand Junction is. The other sort of vote center, if you want to call it that, in a Democratic primary is going to be sort of this collection of counties. There's about half a dozen counties, they're ski country counties, right? Telluride, Vail, Crested Butte, places like that. These are, higher income, often retirees, college educate. It's a very Democratic demographic in these ski country towns. These are places where Biden or Harris are getting 65, 70, 75% of the vote. They're small, but again, there's like a half a dozen of them. They're going to add up to probably about 5% of the vote, maybe a little bit less, 4% of the vote in the statewide Democratic primary. So that's kind of it. I mean, the political geography of this is, it's really about a 5-county region right here is more than 2/3 of the vote. And then you add, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, a little bit, and you're already up to 90. So keep that in mind as this map starts filling in, especially in a Democratic primary. Big chunks of real estate here, not much in the way of votes. 3 minutes till polls close. Am I missing anything, Adam?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I expect we'll get those Denver results hopefully quicker than not, and I think we'll be able to key in on that first district. And then it's those statewide races, and we'll see where vote comes in from these different counties. But from what I've seen online, at least with some of the bigger counties, is they're very structured updates where each county will report at certain times. So hopefully we'll just be able to keep up with it all. Yeah, Denver, you're saying was every the updates are every 45 minutes in 24. Is that what it was? I think it was every 90-minute intervals they would have a new update. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. It is. It's again. It's if you saw a good comp for this kind of would be California, to be honest. If you remember primary night in California, if you were watching at 11 o'clock, they just they come in real fast, and you get up to that 2/3, 3/4, 80%, and it slows down. Now, in Colorado, they don't have the mail coming in for days after the election, but they still have a lot of what's happening today. We were looking at 2 minutes till poll closing. We were looking like in Denver today. The last time we checked, they got 40,000 ballots that they had accounted for that came in today. That's people drop. There's a very small number of people actually go to the polls and just vote kind of the old-fashioned way, but a lot of it is folks dropping stuff off in drop boxes. They take some of that in during the day. They also do a run at poll close time. Once they bring it back, there's processing involved, and that's where it starts to drag down. And again, especially in Denver, right? Boulder's probably another example. University of Colorado is there. That's where you get those young progressive voters who we have been seeing are the ones who are putting these things in at the very last minute. And that's the stuff that ends up, taking a couple. I mean, look, we had a minute to poll closing here. I got the time here, right? In 24, we got to 90% of the vote counted statewide 2 nights after election night. 2 nights later, 48 hours after poll close, we got to 98% counted. We got to 90% counted. We got to 95 3 nights later. So here we go. In 40 seconds, the polls close. Again, the first update, I think I said it was Denver, right? In 2024, the first update we got, we may have a few minutes after polls close. In the 24 presidential election, it was 9:11 p.m. And Denver just dropped a couple 100,000 votes right away. By 9:20 p.m. in 2024, right? Polls closed 9. By 9:20, we had a quarter of all the vote. Counted, released, tabulated. By 9:30, 35%. 9:45, 41, 10 o'clock, half the vote in the first hour. Here we go. New Year's Eve. We need Dick Clark. 3, 2,
1, polls are closed in Colorado. And now we await which county, which city will report first. I'm going to put this up on the screen because this is the one where we have the biggest chance of instant clarity, okay? First district of Colorado, and again, what you're looking at here is Denver, all right? Diana DeGette, elected back in 1996. She replaced Pat Schroeder. You know, Pat Schroeder, sort of a trailblazing figure in American politics, the feminist movement. Schroeder had been elected in 1972. She briefly ran for president in 1988, dropped out before the first primaries. She was a very big figure in American politics. For those, sometimes if younger folks are tuning in, maybe they don't know the name. Older folks, when I say older, I mean like my age, probably do remember her. But it was Pat Schroeder, it was DeGette. That's the last 54 years in this district. And now DeGette being challenged by Maylock Quiros. Wanda James, the third candidate, by the way, she is the elected regent for the University of Colorado system, sort of the board that kind of looks over it. She's elected within the first congressional district. That's how they elect their regents. So technically, she has won an election in this district. She is seen as sort of, we'll see what the numbers say, but the expectation is that DeGette and Quiros have kind of have separated themselves from James. But we will see. Adam, you'll shout if anything comes in that's not Denver, right?
Yep.
Again, Denver was the first, and it was 73% of Denver's vote in one batch last time around. So could tell us an awful lot. And again, that was 9/11. It's 9:02, so we may have a couple minutes here. What else can we talk about? I didn't want to give short shrift to it. I won't go over there now, but just north of here, you're looking at the 8th Congressional District. The 8th Congressional District is the one where Democrats are having their primary tonight. It's a former state lawmaker and a current state lawmaker. They are both from Adams County, which is super fast growing, just north of Denver. Adams County it's probably going to make up 3/4 of the vote in that district. Most of the rest of it is going to come from Weld County. That's where Greeley is. This is the 8th district right here. You know, Commerce City. This is Adams County. This is right over the line from Denver, fast growing, and then the district just goes all the way north up into up into Greeley, up into Weld County. There is a little bit of this district that's in Larimer County. None of the districts in Fort Collins. But again, this is super politically competitive turf. So tonight is about setting up a general election matchup you will be hearing a lot about between now and November. Did you see something?
Denver should be reporting shortly.
Okay, we got an update on that.
Yeah, it should be coming into the system.
When you say those things, I feel they're very knowing and like there's a.
Yes, I see the report on their website, and so it should hit the system.
Folks, it's
shortly.
coming. Folks, it's coming. Oh my goodness. This could be. What do you think it's going to be? DeGette, 30 years in office. Quiros, the socialist challenger. James, the regent. The numbers coming momentarily. Again, we think this will be the best. This is probably the best it's going to be for DeGette. Whatever number gets spit out here think of it as it's probably her high watermark. You know, with whatever vote is left, she will probably come down to some degree from whatever she gets in this first report. And with whatever votes left, we would expect, based on how these things have been going, that Quiros would probably go up to some degree from whatever this first number is. If you're DeGette, you do not want to be trailing here. You want to be leading. You want to have a pad. My goodness.
It looks to be about 70% of the vote.
It's 70% of the vote.
Yeah.
It's 70% of the vote, folks.
It just hit for the statewide races. Okay,
here it comes. Here it comes. This is seconds away, folks. Seconds away.
Check in with Hickenlooper. I'll let you know when it's in.
You don't think it's? I'm going to count to 10 and then we'll go to Hickenlooper. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I want the moment here. 5, 6, 7. Okay. is in our system for the Senate,
Yes,
but it's not in our system for this.
correct.
Okay. Okay, folks, we don't want to miss it. Okay, that's the first batch of vote from Denver. And there's Hickenlooper basically tied with Gonzalez. By comparison, Hickenlooper, when he was elected in 2020, okay, he won the primary with 59% of the vote statewide. He got 53 in Denver, right? So, I mean, bare minimum, if you're Hickenlooper using that as a gauge.
It's in for
It's in.
one.
Here we go, folks. What do we got? Oh, my goodness. Look at this. That is the Denver drop. It's 2/3 of the vote, we think. That's the expected vote. Remember, that number can move a little bit. That's our expectation of how much vote is there. And the challenger, socialist Malat Quiros, leading 30-year incumbent Diana DeGette by 2.5 points, 2,269 votes. Again, this is the city of Denver that just reported out. And again, our expectation is what you have here was the earliest vote to come in. It's been coming in by mail. It's been getting dropped off at these Dropbox centers that they have. And the tracking information they have demographically about ballots that have been accepted has been saying that the electorate has been getting younger the closer we get to Election Day. Okay, that's why when I say an expectation that this first batch is going to be the high watermark for DeGette, it's based on that. It's based on the demographic that we think is fueling Quiros being more represented in the late counted votes than in what you're seeing right here. If that is the case, then it's curtains for DeGette. And what we now expect, and Adam, check me on this, is that we will not get a Denver update for some time.
That's right.
Okay, so take the mental picture, folks. We'll return to it. I think sometime in the next 90 minutes,
Yep.
we get our next Denver update. And that's going to be where we get clarity in this race, because that's the question. The next update, we start getting ballots counted that aren't that are closer to, that are going to be more in that demographic wheelhouse we think for Quiros. So that becomes the question. That next update, does she start expanding the lead? Then it confirms the sense that I'm describing here. If there's a surprise and DeGette's got a chance, you'll see it in that next batch. But that's going to tell us the story. That's if you're Quiros, that's a great start for you. If you're DeGette, that is not. What does this mean for the Senate race? Okay, we showed you this a minute ago, but let's go back out. Now we've got some more in on the Senate race. Okay, Hickenlooper, we got a sixth of the vote in statewide in the Democratic Senate primary, and there's Hickenlooper with a 5-point advantage over Julie Gonzalez. Now, what I want to tell you here is the gauge we're using for how Hickenlooper's doing is when he ran in 2020, he faced a primary, a well-known candidate who ran very much to his left in that primary, okay? Gonzalez is trying to run to the left of Hickenlooper here, a progressive primary opponent for Hickenlooper in 2020. The result was Hickenlooper 59. Andrew Romanoff was the name of the candidate back then. It was 59-41 Hickenlooper, right? So in any given county, just as a rough, a rough gauge here, there's a pad for Hickenlooper of about 9 points. Okay, if he lost 9 points from that, it'd be a 50-50 race, right? So I'm going to start going through the counties, and we're going to say what was Hickenlooper's number in 2020. Okay, so take a look. Like in Weld County, this is a big one. We got 94% of the expected vote. Again, this is where Greeley, Colorado is here. Hickenlooper 59, Gonzalez 40. What was the Hickenlooper number here in 2020 in the primary? 62. So it's down 3 for him. But remember, we say to pad, give or take. This is rough here, just to give you a sense. But the pad is 9, roughly. It's down 3 here in Weld County. Much bigger, Denver, where we started. Again, this is the same thing we just saw in that House race. What was the Hickenlooper number here? It was 53 in 2020. It is 50 right now. Now, a lot more vote to come in Denver. Again, we saw at least 40,000 votes had come in today. and that update was not at poll close. So it's probably 50,000 votes that came in just today in Denver. And again, if those votes are that very progressive sort of young progressive sort, then you could calculate that Gonzalez would improve with the next update from Denver. So right now, Hickenlooper is 3 points short of where he was in 2020 in Denver. And Denver is 20% of the vote statewide, right, in the Democratic primary. This is as big as it gets. That's why we're lingering on Denver here. Hickenlooper, if you're using that 2020 thing, at an absolute bare minimum, 45 is probably as low as he could go in Denver. Okay, he's running at 50 with 2/3 to come, with 2/3 in. Okay, where else do we have here? We got Douglas County. Okay, again, this is in that Denver metro area. Part of where we say 70% of the vote going to come out of this area. Hickenlooper running at 62. What was his number in 2020? It was 64. So we've seen him down 3 from his 2020 number in Weld. We see him down 3 from his 2020 number in Denver. And we see him currently down 2 from his 2020 number in Douglas. These are not landslide numbers if you're Hickenlooper, but if you're trying to just survive, these are so far encouraging numbers if you're Hickenlooper. Teller County is tiny, just next to Colorado Springs. We got Broomfield. Okay, this is just a city-county coterminous. This is the smallest little piece of the Denver metro area, but we got most of the vote here. And the number for Hickenlooper is 55.5. His 2020 number here was 56 and 92% in. So again, this is smaller as Denver metro goes, but these are all numbers. If you're Hickenlooper, we're getting out here. We could test ski country a little bit. How about we do that? Let's go out to Steamboat Springs. This is where the Steamboat Springs Resort is. This is one of those ski country counties. Again, individually, they're not huge. Cumulatively, they probably add up to about 4% of the vote statewide. This you would think, we're talking about, these are the higher income, older Democrats, okay? This you would think is Hickenlooper's wheelhouse. He's getting 72. Key question, what was his number in 2020? It was 72. So no slippage for Hickenlooper in one of the ski country. We got Vail too, huh? We got Eagle County. This is where Vail is. We got about 2/3 of the vote. Hickenlooper, 69. What was his number in 2020? It was 67. So he's now running north of that number. So we got 2 ski country counties that, demographically are coming through for him. The rest that's sort of on this map right now, these are all just, this is the Eastern Plains. I mean, this is the kind of thing you're going to be looking at, down here. This is a county where Trump made some sizable gains, one of his double-digit gain counties, but this is small in a Democratic primary. So zoom out, Hickenlooper with that advantage, it's double digits with 1/4 of the vote in. Key, though, is that we are not seeing him in the big counties, the significant counties where we've got significant vote. You are not seeing the kind of slippage that it would take to endanger Hickenlooper in this primary. That would have to change dramatically, okay? Again, if you're Hickenlooper, a former governor, a United States senator, he briefly ran for president in 2020 against an opponent here who was a state legislator, did not have the best funded campaign. These are not overwhelming numbers if you're Hickenlooper by any stretch of the imagination. But again, these are numbers. If you're Hickenlooper and you're trying to survive, so far you are seeing what you want to see. If we have Weld County, I suspect it means we've got some numbers in the 8th congressional district. Okay, so again, the backdrop here, super politically competitive terrain. Okay, Donald Trump carried this by 2 points in 2020. I'll put it up on the screen. Donald Trump carried it by 2 in 2024. In 2020, Joe Biden carried it by 5. What powered Trump to that victory? Hispanic voters. Those big gains he made with Hispanic voters nationally, that's very much the case in this 8th district. It's about 40% Hispanic. It is super fast growing. Now, what we've got here is there's 3 parts to this district, okay? Adams County is right here. Okay, Greeley, this is Weld County right here where we have vote coming in. And then this is actually the same county. These 2 little slivers are parts of Larimer County, which is where Fort Collins is. The Larimer County portion is like 4% of the vote. So really what you got is about 3/4 of the vote is going to come out of Adams County where we have no votes yet. Okay, and about 20% is going to come right out of here in Weld County. That's where we do have votes, although it's 23% of the whole district, and we got nothing from Larimer. So go into Weld. And you can see Routenell there. We got most of the vote there, most of the expected vote. And Routenell's lead there is 23 points. Now, here's why that's significant. Not just the fact that that's a 23-point lead for Routenell in a pretty good chunk of real estate. This is sort of the disputed territory in the district. Both Byrd and Routenell are from the Adams County, the Adams County portion of the district, okay? Routenell, Commerce City, Byrd, Westminster. They're from the Adams County portion of the district. This is neither one's home turf, and Routenell is up significantly with most of that vote tabulated. So Byrd would need to turn it around. You know, there's a lot of votes down there in Adams County, but they both have political bases down there. Again, Latimer, very small piece of this. Byrd, by the way, pardon me, I wanted to, and again, the winner going to this super competitive general election would be against Gabe Evans. Gabe Evans was elected in a very close race in 2024. And again, this is one of those you'll just hear a ton about between now and November. If you're Routenell, that is a very encouraging start. The dynamic in this race was a little interesting here. Byrd sort of has a long-standing image in Colorado politics as sort of a centrist figure, bipartisan figure. Routenell, until about a year ago, had been sort of running in, occupying a progressive lane, reversed some positions, changed his posture, changed his rhetoric as the opportunity opened in the 8th district, which is, again, super politically competitive in the general election. It's been an interesting dynamic. He's come in for some criticism for that. But again, you're seeing in Weld County, that's a big advantage for him right there. So again, we'll zoom back out to the Senate race here, see if we have some more. If we have some more in. Again, a lot of what you're seeing, I know these look like big, significant pieces of the puzzle, but a lot of what you're seeing are very, very small counties right here. What we're interested in is anything coming out of the immediate Denver metro area. I mean, something like this is Jefferson County right here, right? This would be Adams County, which we're talking about. This would be Arapahoe County. These excuse me, are the big ones that Elber's not. El Paso County down here, where Colorado Springs, we got Pueblo. Okay, here we go. Most of the vote in Pueblo County here, and you can see Hickenlooper running at 61.5. What was his 2020 number here? It was 65. So again, the story is what we've seen elsewhere. This is slippage for Hickenlooper from where he was in 2020, but it's 3 points of slippage. Remember we said he doesn't want to see something around 9 or more, okay? Low single digits. He doesn't want to see high single digits. He can't see double digits. The worst he's seen in terms of slippage so far is low single digits. So again, that continues to be. Pueblo's a big, relatively big puzzle piece here. The news that we're seeing here in these numbers continues to be, if you're Hickenlooper and you're thinking like Al Davis used to with the Raiders, just win, baby. You're seeing what you want to see. The slippage from that 2020 number is just not, so far has not been nearly pronounced enough in what we're looking at. Nothing new has come in here. I just wanted to show it to you. We want to check into the Colorado governor's primary on the Democratic side. Here is a United States senator who does not
We just got Jefferson County as well.
Okay. Look at this. Michael Bennet, United States Senator, Phil Weiser, Attorney General. Weiser had been trying to run to Bennett's left here, stressing a lot of progressive issues, but also Weiser had been trying to make an issue of Bennett's longevity in Washington, trying to attach him to a national party that we have seen in our own polling with Democratic voters is not popular at all. And look at this, the numbers that Weiser is getting. Let's just go through this right here. In Denver, wow, I mean, look at this, sort of the, 2/3 of the vote. He's crushing Bennett in Denver. Jefferson County, Adam just mentioned, this is a giant piece. This is going to be 10% of the vote, 12% of the vote statewide here. Weiser with a double-digit lead over Bennett. Most of the vote in. Look at Douglas. These are the big population centers here in Democratic primaries, and this is where Weiser is putting up. It's only 5 points here. This is the only Denver Metro County, Douglas, that actually voted for Trump in 2024. It's where Weiser's number is the smallest right now, but he's getting a double-digit number out of Jefferson. That's a huge one. He's getting a 30-point margin, as we say, out of Denver. Broomfield is small, but it continues the trend. Take a look up in Weld County. Now there, Bennett has an advantage. Weld County, though, it's big, but it's smaller in a Democratic primary than these Denver Metro ones, and the Bennett lead there is only 2 points. Pueblo County, now there, Bennett's getting a big, that's the first good news for Bennett all night. Now, Pueblo it's significant, but it's about 3% statewide, right? We tell you, Denver, where Weiser's up 30 points, is 20% of the vote statewide. Pueblo County, where Bennett's up 27, is 3% or so of the vote statewide in this primary. Okay, take a look. We were taking you through the ski country counties, Steamboat Springs. Okay, again, I think you kind of would expect Bennett to be doing a little bit better in these. He is there, not in Eagle County, however. Okay, this is in one of Mesa County. This is the population center of the Western Slope, such as it is. Grand Junction is here, and again, look at that. Even there, Weiser with a 15-point advantage. So wow, those are, if you're Weiser, you are loving what you're seeing, and if you're Bennett, holy cow, you didn't give up the Senate seat. But got into this race with the benefit of being a senator, supposedly the benefit, and these numbers are suggesting that Weiser was able to turn that around on him. What did that mean in the Senate primary with Jefferson County? Hickenlooper, 15-point advantage here, 57-42. What was the Hickenlooper number here in 2020, right? 60, down 2.5 points off his 2020 number. So it's very consistent with Hickenlooper. He won 59-41 in 2020. In most places we've checked in, he's down a couple points from that, right? And if you extrapolate that and that continues to be the trend, that would still have him, with 56, 57% of the vote statewide. We're not seeing anything in these numbers that's at odds with that. Mesa County, where Grand Junction is, right? There we go. Another, sizable place. 62, the Hickenlooper number in 2020, 59.5. Very, very steady pattern for him. What's left here that's sizable, like we say, we're waiting on. Adams is going to be big. Adams is going to be huge in that congressional race, right? Arapahoe County, again, these two combined, probably a quarter of the vote statewide in this Democratic primary are going to come out of those two counties. We're waiting on El Paso County, where Colorado Springs is, in a Republican race statewide. That thing is just a monster when it comes to votes. And it's big in a Democratic primary, but especially in a Republican primary, it looms large. But those are and Boulder. We're waiting on Boulder. That's another sizable sort of piece of the puzzle here. Probably 10% of the vote is going to come out of Boulder. So Boulder, Adams, Arapahoe, El Paso, and then Larimer County. Those are the population centers we're waiting to see. Again, a lot of these big counties you're seeing on the Western Slope in the eastern plains of Colorado, you're talking about very low population, especially in a Democratic primary. Check on the Republican primary for governor here. Now, this is interesting. Barb Kirkmeyer is a state legislator who has sort of she nearly won a congressional seat in that 8th district, okay, a couple of years ago. Do we get an update?
Yeah, I have a note for you, and we also just got Arapahoe County.
Oh, okay, and we got communication here, okay. Okay, we got Arapahoe County, so we want to go back to that Senate race. Okay. And there's Hickenlooper, 2/3, 62-38. And what was the Hickenlooper number in 2020? It was 60. So he's 2 ahead of that. So Hickenlooper, that's probably the best piece of news Hickenlooper has on this map. We haven't seen him lose more than 3 points off that 2020 share in any of these counties, and he's actually a little up over, right now at least, over where he was in 2020 in Arapahoe County. So again, what that translates into statewide is an advantage of over 60,000 votes, about 16 points for Hickenlooper. Again, waiting on we've taken you through kind of what's outstanding there. What did that do to the governor's primary here? Take a look here. It is that Weiser color again. Weiser 8-point advantage over Bennett. But I mean, look, if you're, we said,
Steve,
yeah.
I have another note for you as well.
Yes. Oh boy, they are coming in fast and furious here. Yes. The G throws. You know, folks, if I'm a little hesitant here, I'm trying to teach myself.
Steve, we just made a call in the Senate race.
That's what I was trying to find. There it is, folks, and I'm sorry I spoiled the moment for you. Adam was trying to tell me to hit the button, and I was having a little trouble with the button. NBC News officially projects that John Hickenlooper, first-term United States Senator, has been renominated. He wins the Democratic primary, defeating state legislator Julie Gonzalez. Hickenlooper will move on to the general election, where he will be the overwhelming favorite in a state that lopsidedly voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. Hickenlooper, by the way, had announced prior to this campaign that this would be it for him. He said he would intended to serve one more term, and then he would retire. The question was, would the voters of his party give him a chance to have another term? The answer to that is yes. Hickenlooper will hold off Julie Gonzalez, our decision desk says, and will win this primary. Again, we've shown you the reasons why. It is not an overwhelming victory for Hickenlooper here, but he was not suffering the kind of slippage from his prior performance that was going to endanger him tonight. He had won his primary in 2020, 59-41, and so far he is winning these counties generally by a few points less than he did in 2020. In terms of where the final margin, for this will land, one question will be, as we say, that late counted vote. Is it going to be progressive flavored? Is it going to be disproportionately young, college-educated, progressive, especially in Denver? That could boost Gonzalez's numbers some, but our decision desk is saying here that Hickenlooper's got himself a big enough pad through all the numbers we've been showing you where it's just not going to be there for Gonzalez. So Hickenlooper will be renominated, and again, will be the overwhelming favorite in November to hold the seat for Democrats. Again, will be interesting to see as this map fills out exactly what that final margin lands at. Gonzalez had been part of the Democratic Socialists of America until just before this campaign. She said she let her membership lapse, which was no longer a member, but she didn't move away from any of the positions she had previously taken. So really, this was a test here in a Democratic primary, a statewide Democratic primary. This was a test of how much appetite there was for a candidate, a Democratic Socialists of America candidate. That is essentially what Gonzalez was. Currently, she's running at 42% against Hickenlooper. And again, if you're measuring it versus 2020, if she's going to land here in the mid-40s, ultimately, that would not be surprising at all. You can decide for yourself if this thing were to be 56-44, if that were to end up somewhere like that for Hickenlooper, what would that say? I leave that to you, but those are the dynamics that people are going to try to be discussing after this one. Go back to the governor's race. I keep reading the G as a 6. That is what is happening. Back to the governor's race here. And again, the other senator, the state's other Democratic senator, Michael Bennet here in big trouble in this primary. And I think we were just starting to say, the big problem for him, besides the fact he's down, is the places that have the most votes in a Democratic primary. They are Weiser blue here. Denver, an absolute blowout here for Weiser over Bennett. And if that late counted vote, we're talking about it in the House race, we're talking about it in the Senate race, if that late counted vote is friendly to Weiser and not Bennett, and I think there's a lot of reasons to expect it would be, this could get worse for Bennett. This could get better for Weiser in this gigantic county. We've yet to hear anything from Adams County. Explosive growth in Adams County. It's becoming a bigger and bigger piece of the puzzle in each party's statewide primary with every election. Yet to hear anything there. But again, just looking at that Weiser blue around there, if that one fills in for him, he's going to be feeling extra good about his position here. And again, I think the interesting thing here, Weiser tried to establish himself to the left of Bennett, sort of as a progressive, but it's also that element of running against the sort of the Washington wing of the Democratic Party. Bennett had been there for a while, in the Senate, and Weiser was trying to turn that against him. every time we take an NBC News poll, we talk about the low very low favorability numbers for the Democratic Party, and that one of the reasons for that is that Democrats themselves are expressing a very low opinion of their own party and their party's national leadership. That's one of the things that Weiser was trying to connect with here against Bennett, and certainly indications that he may have succeeded in doing that. 8th District here, again, we just have, this is to find out who the Democrats will nominate in one of the most closely watched congressional races this fall, which again, we just have Weld County in right here. There's a very good number if you're Routenell, but we're waiting on Adams County. So in the governor's race there, we're waiting on Adams County. In this congressional race, we're waiting on Adams County. Byrd's going to need to turn it around there in a big way. Does have a political base there, but so does Routenell. But we're waiting on that. In the Republican gubernatorial primary, this one, we started to talk about this. So Barb Kirkmeyer is a state legislator. She nearly got elected to Congress in that 8th district a couple of years ago, lost a very narrow race in 2022, didn't go for a rematch in 2024. Turns out she might have won if she did. Instead, she decided to run for governor. She has the conventional endorsements I think you'd expect from sort of, party luminaries who are there in Colorado. There still are some of those on the Republican side. She has, again, as a candidate who nearly won a swing district, she's tried to create an image as a political moderate, a political centrist. Her opponents, however, Victor Marx has made a series of explosive, inflammatory claims here about his own biography. How do you say? He said that when he was 7 years old, he said, without providing details, that his stepfather had made him kill another man. He talked about, he again alluded to having killed others around the world under circumstances that he didn't. Victor Marx is running 4 points behind Kirkmeyer right now. The dynamics here are interesting. And Scott Bottoms, a state legislator here, also a pastor. Bottoms' base is El Paso County, Colorado Springs. Again, this is huge. It's huge. It's the biggest county in the state, but in a Republican primary, too, it's a Republican county. So you can expect, I think Bottoms will get a better number there, but he's trailing. Right now, this is about Kirkmeyer and Marx. And just take a look here, again, Kirkmeyer, she ran, we'll give you Weld County, right? This is where she ran for Congress a couple years ago. She's leading there by 15 points over Marx. In the city of Denver, this is much smaller in terms of its importance to a Republican primary. But again, given her political profile and the demographics of Denver, not a surprise. Now, this is big. Jefferson in a Republican primary is very big. She's leading there by 13 points. Arapahoe County, again, these are the bedroom community suburbs of Denver, college degrees. These are Republican voters who are much more culturally moderate. This is the wheelhouse for Kirkmeyer here, and she's putting up good numbers, but I think, honestly, she wants to put up better numbers because let's see what happens when you get outside of that Denver metro area. I think we just got Adams County. Ooh, only a 2-point margin of her there. But getting Adams County means we got big news in the 8th congressional district. Remember, well, let's just call it right up. Oh, wow, I think we just got clarity, folks. We sure did. Adams County, this is the home of both Manny Routenell and Shannon Byrd. This is about 3/4, about 70% of the vote in this district. Routenell clobbering Byrd. So here we saw him in Weld County. We said this was a great number for Routenell. And the question was, could Byrd somehow turn it around in Adams County? And the answer is no. The numbers got worse for her there. The other county that's a part of this Larimer, it's just a sliver. It's just a small share of the vote. We got 90% of the vote, and you can see it. There's Manny Routenell crushing Shannon Byrd. And so Routenell poised. We'll show you. Should I? Any folks will here keep it on, but there it is, the check mark. I wanted you to see the check mark because I blew it on that Senate race, but I got it to you in the 8th district. NBC News projects that Manny Rutinel has won the Democratic primary in Colorado's 8th congressional district. He will be the Democratic candidate for Congress this November, and he will face off against freshman Republican Gabe Evans, who was renominated by his party without opposition. And the backdrop for this race this November is going to be one of the most politically contested and competitive districts in the country. Donald Trump won this district by 2 points in 2024. In 2020, Joe Biden won it by 5 points. The reason Trump was able to flip it in 2024, this district, the 8th congressional district, going from Commerce City up to Greeley here, large Hispanic population. It's about 40% of the population in this district. Trump made tremendous inroads with Hispanic voters nationally and in this district in 2024. And this is going to be a very fascinating readout this November about what happened with those gains that Trump made in 24, what happens with them in 2026. Because if Evans is going to hold this seat, he's going to need to hold some of those gains. Some of those gains that Trump made accrued to him in that race. Sorry about that. And we will see if Manny Rutinel can win those voters back for Democrats. But that's going to be the theme of this incredibly closely watched race.
We just got our first reports in Boulder and El Paso counties as well.
Okay, let's call this up in that Democratic gubernatorial.
The 6 is a
I should have learned how to
the
do.
G is a 6. Whichever
Man, I'm seeing county with the CO. I got to train my brain. Colorado governor Democrat. Here we go. The shortcut. I've managed to make a total mess of it. Okay, you said we got Boulder. Again, no surprise here. The candidate running to the left in this primary, Phil Weiser. But this is 10% of the vote in the Democratic primary. Boulder's huge. Weiser is winning it by 20 points, netting about 10,000 votes. You said we didn't show you Adams County. Adams County in this race, Weiser with an advantage here. It's not huge, but again, it does pad that statewide margin for him. 70% of the vote. It's about a 10-point margin for Weiser. Getting El Paso. Okay, now there it is. El Paso is probably 7-8% of the vote statewide in the Democratic primary. Bennett leading by 3. So he does he's netting 1,438 votes, but he's looking at a more than 50,000 vote deficit right here. And what is left that's in terms of population centers that's left, it's right here. It's Larimer County where Fort Collins is. That's the biggest population center we don't have vote from. Again, a lot of these puzzle pieces you're looking at here are large. Basically, it's the Denver metro area. You could just, from Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Denver metro area, the Front Range, they call it, right, up into Fort Collins, Larimer, out to Greeley. That's where the vast majority of the population is. And then you get the Rocky Mountains, right? You go right up into those mountains, and then you come down on the western slope. So you got some ski towns in there. You got Grand Junction, beautiful Grand Junction in the west, but a lot of very small population. And then this is plains. This is just the eastern plains of Colorado over here. And again, especially in the Democratic primary, there's just not much action there. So Bennett in big trouble there in that Democratic gubernatorial primary. Again, he did not give up the Senate seat for this. I was just leaving it there in case something happened.
Just leave it there.
Leave it there. There it is, folks. NBC News projects that State Attorney General Phil Weiser has won the Democratic nomination for governor of Colorado. He has defeated United States Senator Michael Bennet. Weiser will be the Democratic nominee for governor this November. We are still waiting to find out who his Republican opponent will be. Let me put those numbers up on the screen for you. It is a close race right there between state legislator Barb Kirkmeyer and Victor Marks. Kirkmeyer with support heavily concentrated in the Denver metro area. Marks, we can see, doing quite well. Now we got El Paso County. A Republican primary. This is enormous in terms of its the scale here. Marks leads in El Paso County right now over Kirkmeyer. Wow. So again, and Marks is, just in these sort of western slope counties here, again, small, but they're bigger in a Republican primary. Look at these Marks numbers. We just kind of take a tour through in Mesa. He's crushing her in Mesa. Go down here. I'm seeing these with you for the first time. And it's not, look at this. It's not even that Marks, look at Scott Bottoms doing much better out here. This is the sort of rural base of the Republican Party in Colorado here. Small town, rural Colorado. in the let's see here, Marks is crushing it in the southeastern plains, right? But you do see Kirkmeyer in the northeastern plains. She is leading slightly there. Those aren't big numbers for her. So it translates into an 8,800 vote advantage for Kirkmeyer. She's certainly eagerly awaiting Larimer County. I think expectations are she could do quite well up there in Larimer County. Remember, that's her political base, Larimer County. So that could be a key moment for her. Can she pad more get more pad there out of Larimer County? But this Republican gubernatorial race, fascinating to see how close that is for her with Victor Marks. So at 9:40, we said we'd get a ton of votes fast. What have we resolved? We've resolved the Senate primary here on the Democratic side. Now, 70% of the vote. Did we take you through what it looked like? Adams County, I can't even remember. Had I shown the Senate numbers on this? Adams County, so there is slippage here for Hickenlooper. This is the biggest slippage we've seen. In 2020, he got 59% here. He's running at 53.5% here. And I don't think we had shown El Paso here. Hickenlooper, I think he's down about 5 points here too. Oh, wow. This is the biggest slippage we've seen. Yeah, Hickenlooper got 63% of the vote. That's where Colorado Springs is, slipping down to, see, if we were seeing this in every county, right, that kind of slippage, Hickenlooper would have been in trouble tonight. But he didn't, in places like Arapahoe County, in places like Jefferson County, you're just not seeing that. Again, going through the Ski County, what do we got here? His number in Summit County, I'm trying to call up here. Yeah, 66 then, 66 now. So no slippage at all. Breckenridge, again, those higher income, a lot of retirees, that sort of wing of the Democratic base sticking with Hickenlooper. So we've seen that in the Senate race. Now 76. We got Larimer County. Okay, that's what it looks like in the Senate race. It was 59 for Hickenlooper in 2020, 56 now. But we're getting Larimer County. Let's go right back to that governor's, Colorado, governor Republican. I'm sorry, folks, I'm having trouble with that. We just got it. It is a big number there for Kirkmeyer. That's a 3,200 vote plurality that she gets out of there. 2/3 of the vote now in statewide. Again, that adds to her lead, but it's 11,847 votes. There's an interesting division here between sort of the northeastern plains, the southeastern plains there in Colorado. And that western slope has been good for Mark so far. Ski country, as you can see there, Steamboat Springs, good for Kirkmeyer. We said, though, not Eagle County. She's actually losing by 3 votes in Eagle County and Summit County. She is, you'd expect that. Pitkin County, you expect that. This is where Crested Butte is, the ski resort, San Miguel County. We don't have that yet. But to zoom out statewide, that's nearly 70% of the vote. Kirkmeyer continues to enjoy a slight advantage there. And again, there are still these places these big population places, still a lot of vote to come there. That's promising in Arapahoe County. That's promising if you're Kirkmeyer. Adams County, that's discouraging if you're Kirkmeyer. You want to be, these Denver metro counties is where you want to be not just winning, but running up some kind of score. Not a ton left in Jefferson County, but a good advantage for her there. City of Denver, we said, is it's not much on the Republican side, but she's winning it big. She can still get more out of Weld County. This is her base. And she can still get more out of Larimer County. But of course, down here in El Paso County, still vote to come. She could lose 15. At this pace, she would lose. Marks would net another 1,600 votes or so out of El Paso County. Pueblo County, she's getting crushed. She's getting crushed. That's 3,000 vote margin. If it continues at this rate, she'd lose another 1,500 or so there. So between Pueblo and El Paso, she could lose another 3,000 votes off that lead, which is still 11,600. She could pad it there. So, yeah, it's kind of in that. What we were saying there about our friend Hickenlooper in the Senate primary. It's not overwhelming. It's even less much less overwhelming if you're Kirkmeyer. But there are still opportunities for her to hold on to this. And again, the governor's primary we have called. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with it. I'm reading it CO6. There it is. Okay.
I can move those around for you if you want,
Yep.
but we do have some guidance from our decision desk on Colorado 1.
Yes.
So our next expected update is the 10:30 p.m. report, but the race is very likely not going to be callable tonight if past vote reporting patterns hold and they don't get above 80% in tonight. So
They don't get above 80%. Okay.
That's just an update there.
10:30. It's 9:45. Right. So that's kind of what we said at the top was our thought. We get that avalanche, and if we don't have clarity at 10:30, it might be a while. But I do think that next batch at 10:30. I can give you a sense of what the size of that has been in the past. So that 10:30 update in 2024 took you. It was 10% of the vote. It took you 9%. It took you from 73% in to 82 into 2024. So if we get something like that, this 65 can go up to maybe 75 at that next update. Again, it varies by county here, but the way they do it in Denver is every 90 minutes, they say is their aim to report out whatever they could get done in that intervening 90 minutes. But I think, there's two questions here. Adam just addressed the question of our decision desk calling it, what would be callable for our decision desk, and wanting to get to 80% or more on election night, and the fact that, they get to a point, usually about midnight or so where they're not counting more on election night, and then it will go a day, 2 days, 3 days. But in terms of starting to see where this is going, okay, the next update is going to be very significant here because, like we're saying, the expectation, what we've seen elsewhere and what we've seen in terms of the stats that have been made available about the demographics of the electorate, of the returned ballots, would suggest that we're going to start getting into Kyros-friendly votes going forward, more Kyros-friendly than what first came out right there. So it's going to be interesting to see in this next update if Kyros is, if this is, it's 2.3 points right now. 2.3 points is the margin, 2,230. If that meaningfully moves and expands for Kyros, I think that starts to confirm mentally, I'm not saying decision desk, but in my own thinking, and maybe yours as well, that sense of what those votes look like and what that means for Kyros and for DeGette. So I know this is to have a 30-year incumbent in this position, this is the story of the hour. I know we've been off this now for 40 minutes because we knew once we got that first batch, it's going to be a while till we get the next. So we'll probably navigate away from this again here. I don't want you to think you're missing anything in Colorado 1, because I think in about 30 minutes or so, we're going to probably just come back here and park it and wait to see what that next update looks like, because I think that's and again what we've set. So I'll navigate away from it. We've set our matchup for November in the 8th Congressional District. Manny Rutnell, Democrat, will face off against Gabe Evans, the Republican. We have called, I'm starting to learn these buttons finally. We've called the Senate Democratic primary, Hickenlooper over Gonzalez. Now, 3/4 of the vote is in there. You don't see Gonzalez winning any of these counties, but you do have to wonder if this one's going to flip. And if the city of Denver is going to end up being a Gonzalez County. Because again, that everything we just said about those votes in the House primary applies to Gonzalez in this Senate primary. She's 662 votes south of Hickenlooper right now. If this gets any better for Gonzalez with the subsequent updates, she will pass him and she would win Denver. Again, we're not talking here about any chance of her winning this election, but this is about measuring the sort of taking the temperature of the Democratic Party in a pretty good-sized state here, right? When it comes to this DSA socialist insurgency that we've been seeing elsewhere. We see it in New York City. We see it in Philadelphia. We see it in Washington, D.C. One of the questions is, how much broader can it get in the Democratic Party? That's what makes this Senate race so interesting here in terms of where the number lands. Already, you're seeing Gonzalez running at 43%. And like we've been saying, if you're using 2020, when Hickenlooper ran for this seat and won the primary with 59% as a gauge, right, we're seeing generally him run short of that number in these counties. So if that is true across the state, he may be in tonight to finish at 55, 56% of the vote. And Gonzalez, you would have a candidate, right, a not particularly well-funded candidate who had been part of this Democratic Socialists of America until a year ago, taking on a former governor, United States senator, and presidential candidate, as well known as they get in Colorado Democratic politics, and maybe making it like a 10-point race. Is that where this is going to kind of land here? I mean, then I leave it to you. Again, I'm just trying to get a sense of what the shape of this thing is. I'd be curious, you and I know everybody else out there, try to make sense of what that says about the Democratic Party, what that says about the temperature in the party for these types of candidacies, because we are seeing them all over the place right now. So we're going to continue to look at this just to again see where exactly that Gonzalez number lands. And Denver's because again, just take a look around that Denver metro. Well, Boulder too. She's running. This is actually. Did we take you through Boulder? Yeah. This is interesting. This is actually this is a surprise. I don't think we had put Boulder up before. Sometimes the numbers catch me by surprise. Well, I mean, I look at Denver and you look at Boulder, Colorado Buffaloes, college town, famously liberal Boulder, right? Of course, this is going to be a fertile ground for Gonzalez. Well, Hickenlooper's number in Boulder in 2020 in that Democratic primary was 52, 57. He's gotten better in the famous liberal bastion of Boulder. He's actually gotten better tonight. Are there some demographic differences between Denver, city of Denver, and Boulder? I think there are. It's not just, we think of Boulder as a college town. Boulder, first of all, is not the entirety. Boulder City is not the entirety of the county, and it's not just a college town. I think there are also some older Democrats there, older voters, older folks who fit more that profile, that sort of higher income profile, older, higher income. Maybe one of the differences that we've been seeing in these Democratic primaries, renters versus homeowners. Maybe on the Boulder side, there's more of the a little bit more than Denver. Anyway, it's actually Hickenlooper in a sizable county. That's the biggest jump we've seen for Hickenlooper. We see him losing ground everywhere relative to 2020. He's actually gaining it in Boulder. That's an interesting dynamic. I don't know why that just happened. I pressed the wrong button, but there we are, 77%. Again, this is where things really kind of do slow down in these vote counts statewide. They got, in 53 minutes, they got 77% of their vote out in this Democratic primary. We do have a big update from Denver coming, and it's going to be a very consequential one, but it is slowing down elsewhere. We'll call up the governor's primary here. On the Republican side here, this race still outstanding. That Kirkmeyer margin, if you've been watching, had gotten up close to about 12,000 votes, I think, when she got the Larimer County, Fort Collins update. It's since ticked down to 10,000. And I'm going to call this up on my screen here because I'd like to see where the most remaining vote is. Right, there's 100. We think there's 155,000 votes left. We think in this primary. Again, those numbers, those are moving targets that our decision desk sets. The biggest single outstanding source of votes, we think, is El Paso County. So right here, okay, where Marks is leading Kirkmeyer by about 5 points, 3,300 votes, and we think there's about 27,000 that are left here, right? So if Marks continues to lead Kirkmeyer by 5 points. It's a little bit more than 5 points. That would be about another 1,400 votes that he would net just from El Paso County. And that would knock her number down south of 9,000. The second biggest source of outstanding votes that we got here, we think, is in Douglas County. But look at this. Now, in Douglas County, Kirkmeyer is leading by 7.5 points, 3,300 votes, raw votes, similar margin right there. And again, we think about 16,000 votes are left here. So if she continues to win it at the same clip, that's going to be about, it should probably net another 1,000 votes or so. So Marks could take a chunk out with what's left in El Paso County, and Kirkmeyer could counter in Douglas County. She could also, in Weld County, here in her political base, about 13,000 votes left. She's winning there, by 15 points, right? So that she would net another 2,000 at that rate out of her home county. Now in what we've counted here, this is netting out to her benefit. Larimer County, we think 13,000 votes left in Larimer County. Again, this is sort of part of her base, 13-point margin here. Again, this would be close to 2,000 additional net votes for Kirkmeyer. So you see opportunities for her. Again, in that sort of front range row of counties and cities there. Where she's doing the worst, let's see that. Yeah, she does. Let's see here. Where is she losing to Marks? She's losing to Marks by 20 points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Looks like about 15 counties where she's losing by approximately 20 to 30 points. She's losing to Marks, and they, in terms of remaining vote, they are 10, 15, 20, about 25,000. So if you just said if in her worst counties, if there's 25,000 votes left and she's losing them by 20 points to Marks, he nets 5,000. So, and that's at the low end of the scale for her. It starts to get better after that. She starts to move into like single digits. So yeah, if you're Kirkmeyer, the other threat if you're Kirkmeyer though is, are we going to see the dynamic in the Republican primary that we've seen in the Democratic primary, where there's a particular part of the base that is overrepresented in the late counted vote, right? We've seen this in other Republican primaries where it's sort of that MAGA, that pro-MAGA, pro-Trump vote. The late counted tends to be the same day vote tends to be disproportionately sort of MAGA base. If that's the case here, again, Kirkmeyer's best numbers are in the places that are Trump's weak spots, relatively speaking, with Republican primary voters. So that could change the math in the final 30% that's counted right here. Everything I'm giving you is an extrapolation based on what's already happened. Based on what's already happened, if that continues, Kirkmeyer can win this thing, can win this thing by a small margin. But if that late counted vote is more MAGA, there's definitely room there for Marks to catch her. I don't know. Has our decision desk given a similar characterization of their ability to call this race? Is that something you could check with them on? Or?
Yeah, I'll check with them on this race. I do have one note from them on Colorado 1. They were looking back at some of the logs from 2022 in this race. They say in the 2022 Democratic primary in Colorado 1, about 75% of the vote was counted by the end of election night. The 25% of votes that were reported after election day narrowed Degette's margin from 67-point election night margin to a final margin of 62 points. And that was in 2022.
In 2022, she faced a primary challenger.
Yes.
And her margin came down 5 points.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is before she was, sort of in the crosshairs of this sort of DSA movement. And even then, against nominal opposition, right? You saw. So, again, I said when we came on, and we were waiting for that Denver, batch. I said if you're DeGette and you're not leading, you're not going to feel good. And again, we would need there would need to be, I think, a surprise just in terms of what that vote is breaking like. There'd need to be a surprise that cuts against a lot of expectations, against a lot of what we've seen in other primaries, what we've been seeing in the demographic information that's been available about the returned ballots, and now in terms of what our decision desk is telling us about the 2022 primary challenge to DeGette. There would need to be a surprise that cuts against the weight of all of that. I know it's close. I know it's 2.3 points, but if it's true that first batch was as good as it gets for DeGette, she ended up in second place on that first batch. So we are sitting here at 10 o'clock now, 10 o'clock Eastern, and there is some action here in this Republican primary, but again, it's going to come in, it's going to be very slow from this point forward. Colorado gets to, as we said, they get to about 75%, and then it grinds to a halt. We're at 72 here. Kirkmeyer's ahead by 10,000.
The process in a lot of these counties is, vote, as we talked about earlier, polls closed. People could still, it's a mail ballot state. People drop off their ballots that they received in the mail at boxes at different locations. And I think the process, after you get through the first kind of batch, is to go around from the various parts of your county, collect votes, and report it back in. So I think that's kind of the gap between what we get in the initial reports and then the subsequent reports.
Yeah, and then it's just they pick these things up at the drop box, but then they got to verify everything, that whole processing thing. And again, that's why I'm just looking at the numbers here. 2024, it was 2 nights after election night, Thursday night, they hit. This number didn't hit 90% until Thursday, right? And then it didn't hit 95% until Friday. So, they hit the 72% awfully fast. We did it in an hour in this Republican governor's race. But again, I wouldn't expect a ton more. We've kind of got a trickle here, and we've got that question. We've got that question of, does the late counted stuff, the stuff that was thrown into the drop box this afternoon, right? The folks who went in, just decided today they have this mail ballot and they want, is that a more MAGA, type of vote? If it is, that could be trouble for Kirkmeyer here. Because again, she's very much sort of that traditional centrist type. There's the Republicans in Colorado who've had success in the past. Colorado's a state that had been a Republican state, believe it or not. About 25 years ago, it made a very fast political transformation to the blue state it is right now. But there were some Republicans who had some success in that period. Cory Gardner, for instance, comes to mind. He won a U.S. Senate race there in 2014. He lost to Hickenlooper, lost his Senate seat to Hickenlooper in 2020. Kirkmeyer is like a Cory Gardner type candidate here. So very much from that kind of vintage of the Republican Party in Colorado, Marks and Bottoms are very much aligned with that populist in sort of insurgency energy that Trump's not endorsed in this race, but they're certainly trying to align himself with the Trump grassroots right there. And if it's that Trump grassroots that's sort of disproportionately voting late in this thing, I mean, that's what Marks would need this to be. I see it's come under 10,000, so we just got to...
We got another update from Adams County.
Yeah.
So this is our second update, this is our second update from the county. So this was, in the Republican race, it was 981 votes. Marks gets 45% of them, and Kirkmeyer gets 35.
Oh, wow. So it's 1,000 votes, essentially. But we're now getting, have we gotten any of these readouts anywhere else?
I've been monitoring. That's the first one that caught my attention.
It catches my attention. And if you're watching this, you know why, and I'm sure it caught your attention too. That's exactly what we said Marks would need. and it potentially gets right to that dynamic. Here we are, right, in the Denver metro area. Now, very close here. Remember, Kirkmeyer, I was saying when we looked at that election, when we looked at that first report in Adams County, said, Kirkmeyer, you probably wanted more than you got. It was a very narrow lead for her. Now they're getting into that next stack. Now they're getting into the stuff that they went out and they got at the drop-off centers today, and they brought back the late vote. Now you're starting to see the numbers from there in the first update from this county. This is a big politically significant county in the Denver metro area. The first update is Marks winning it, that update, by 10 points over Kirkmeyer.
And I know we've already called the Senate race, but I do think maybe, it helps us think about what we're waiting for in Colorado 1 as well.
Yes.
We do have the second update from Adams County.
Yes. And
so in the first vote report, Hickenlooper got 54% and Gonzalez got 47%.
Wait, that's 101. Wait a minute.
There's rounding here. 53.5, 46.5. And in the second update, there was 2,000 votes. Gonzalez wins 60.9% of them.
Wow.
And Hickenlooper gets 38.1.
Yeah, I'm putting the decimal points there like they matter. That's emphatic, that's clear, and holy cow. So that's Adams County. Again, we're talking, this is more like, this is the suburbs of Denver here. And huge population. And look at that. Gonzalez, the candidate, again, this is the candidate very much to the left of Hickenlooper here, wins that update by 23 points over Hickenlooper. After Hickenlooper had won the initial batch. And what that does to the statewide number, yeah, it's 91,000. Let me ask you this, Adam.
Yes.
How much what's our expected remaining vote in Adams County?
In Adams County, it's 11,000 ballots.
And we just had her winning that by 23 points. So if she were to win it by, I'm just trying to see how close this could get her. I'm trying to extrapolate this statewide. I mean, if she wins the remaining vote there by 20 points, she nets another 2,200 votes. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to see if we knock it down to 89. There's opportunities here for Arapahoe County. Yeah.
We got our second update in Broomfield as well.
Yeah, okay, let's take a look at that.
Do you want to stick with this race?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm pulling it up here. Went to the other race.
This is a relatively new in the scheme of history county, city.
Okay, so the first update there was 55.5 for Hickenlooper, 44.5 for Gonzalez. The second update, 59.5 for Gonzalez, 40.5 for Hickenlooper.
59.5. Okay, but
800 votes in the late
right, and that has, I just noticed that has taken us to our 95% number. We think we're pretty much there in Broomfield.
Yeah, I don't have any more guidance than that number.
Right. I mean, again, it raises the possibility when we get to 95, that generally means we're hitting what we think we expect the total number of votes we expected the total number of votes to be at the start of the night. But our decision desk then goes in and checks that and wants to see if the patterns that have actually emerged, that number can be adjusted. So one possibility is we're pretty much done in Broomfield County. Gonzalez did do better with the late arriving, late counted vote, but it didn't budge the overall number that much. Also, it is possible, since they don't really report this stuff to us ahead of time exactly how much, possible there's more to come in Broomfield, that more people dropped ballots off today. Remember, everybody gets mailed these in Colorado, and they can, they mail them back, they can bring them in, they can drop them off. Maybe more people decided to do that today, and it's a pro-Gonzalez vote. But you're definitely seeing, the upshot of this is what we teed up at the beginning here. Late arriving, late counted votes, Democratic primary favoring the progressive, the terminology here again, I mean, a lot of people would say Hickenlooper's a progressive. So I mean to the left of progressive, the sort of insurgency, DSA-style insurgency, benefiting from those late arriving, late counted votes. Later, I don't want to screw the terminology up. When I say late arriving, they're arriving before the deadline, but late relative to other ballots.
If you want to revisit the governor primary for Republicans, I do have some thinking from the analytics desk at our decision desk. They think in order for Marks to catch up in the governor race, the unreported votes in each county would have to be on average about 4 points better for Marks than what has been reported thus far. 4 points,
right? But can you tell me what Broomfield was in the gubernatorial, in the Republican primary here?
Yes. So we got, it's about 300 new votes there. In the initial batch, Marks gets 32% rounding, and Kirkmeyer gets 52%. In this subsequent batch, Kirkmeyer gets 36%, and Marks gets 43%.
Oh, she fell. So not only that, look at this. That also means that 21. That also means that the third candidate here, Bottoms, again, who's very much that.
You had those numbers flipped, but in terms of the comparison, Marks gets the plurality there.
Say that. I'm sorry. Give it to me again. I'm sorry.
Marks gets 43%. Kirkmeyer gets 36%.
The whole. I erased the whole thing. I'm sorry. You got it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, folks.
Hold on. Give me a second. So initial batch, Marks 32. Second batch, Marks 43.
Right. Okay. I see.
Initial batch, Kirkmeyer 53.
Right.
Subsequent 36.
Okay. Wow. So she's down 17. He's up 11. And the other sort. So you're seeing two things. First of all, you are seeing in the second batch in both Adams County and Broomfield County, you are seeing Marks get the kind of improvement our decision desk easily in those two counties at least, getting the kind of improvement our decision desk says he needs to get if he's going to pull ahead here statewide. And you're also seeing more broadly the fact that the combined Marks-Bottoms vote, right? It was 47 in the initial batch, and now it's up to 64. Holy cow, right? Again, these are the two sort of insurgent, populist, conservative type candidates here, right? And it just speaks to the flavor of those late arriving, late counted votes. Very progressive on the Democratic side, very MAGA on the Republican side. And it redounds to the benefit here so far. Again, we've seen this in other primaries, right? And so it's only two counties right now. It's only two updates from two counties, but it's also coming on the heels of all these other primaries where we've seen this same thing happen. And so again, if that continues to happen, if we see it in a few more counties here, then Marks's position gets a lot better very quickly. Already, Marks is looking at those two counties and getting easily the kinds of numbers he needs to get to reverse the advantage that Kirkmeyer has right there. And what that means in the first congressional district here is, since we've now seen in two counties on the Democratic side in the Senate primary, we've seen the DSA-style candidate do markedly better with the two late arriving, late counted updates that we've gotten. Is there much reason to suspect that's not going to be the case in Denver? In Denver, the very young population, a lot of renters, college educated, it's right in the middle of that demographic wheelhouse of those DSA style candidates. We're seeing it in Adams County. We're seeing it in Broomfield County. We're going to find out in the next few minutes if we see it in Denver. But if we do, then sometime in the next few minutes, again, they say they try to space these to 90 minutes-ish. So 9 o'clock poll close, next update, 10:30-ish. Sorry, this number will go up. Oh my goodness, this number will go up. We don't know exactly how much, but is this number going up too? And is this number going down? Is Quiros going to get some significant separation from DeGette with this next update? And also, if it's anything like we've seen in these other two counties, I think it just really reinforces what the expectation is for the other updates that are going to come after that. So Adam, you tell me if we get more new updates from other counties that we can compare to.
Yep.
But for right now, I'm going to leave it on this screen. I'm going to pick this piece of paper up, and I'm going to write these numbers down myself so I have them in front of me the second this thing updates. 47.5, 45.2, 46.306, 44.076, and it's a gap of 22.30. Now, I could have just taken a picture of the screen and then referred back to that, but I prefer to do it this way. So, again, I'm going to leave it here right now because we're kind of in that zone where it could happen any second. I mean, it could take 15 minutes. It could take 20 minutes. It could also happen now. But Adam is looking, and we're trying to see if we have any other counties. Because every county in the state is basically in the same position right now. They've given you their big initial batch of vote. And now they're all assembling the stuff that they've processed at some point tonight so far, and they're going to, they don't all give updates on the same timeline, but a lot of them start giving you incremental updates. We've had two. We've had one from Adams County. We've had one from Broomfield County, and both of them have been much more sort of MAGA flavored on the Republican side and much more DSA flavored on the Democratic side. And I think, again, that was sort of our expectation, but now that we're starting to see it, let's see a few more. Let's make sure those two aren't aberrations, they're not blips, there's not something more complicated happening. It's only two right now, but if we start seeing it in more, then the pattern really becomes clear, really becomes unmistakable. And like I said, the implications for this first congressional district, where you have a very endangered incumbent. We have, I think, coming into tonight, the number is 6 incumbents who lost in primaries so far this year. Coming in tonight, it was 6.
That sounds right. And we've just gotten reconfirmation that the next vote update we're expecting from Denver will be 10:30 Eastern.
10:30 Eastern. That does give us, I see, 10:17 and 30 seconds. Yeah, we came on the air last week, and we said, New York was last week. We came on the air saying 4 incumbents had lost. And there were a number who were endangered. In New York, we wondered about Utah last week. We wondered about a few. 2 went down last week. Adriano Espiat in New York, Dan Goldman in New York. So that brings the number to 6. If this current order holds, the number goes to 7, right? And again, this would be another significant victory within the Democratic Party for that DSA style of politics, which we've been talking about here, and we've been watching happen right throughout this primary season. Where have we seen it? Most notably, Philadelphia. Chris Rabb won a congressional primary there in what may be the most Democratic district in the country. And I remember, in fact, if you were watching that night, this was back in early May, Rabb, we got an initial vote report in Philadelphia. Rabb wasn't leading it. And then the election day vote started getting counted, and he was just running up the score. Same thing. The folks who voted late there, relatively late, were that DSA style. So we saw, the DSA folks pull it off there. There's a lot of attention to New York City, the Washington, D.C. mayor's race. We've seen other cities around the country, not just this year, but recently elect socialists. We saw a DSA type candidate endorsed by Bernie Sanders and AOC in the suburbs of New Jersey. Ana Lilia Mejia won the special election, the Democratic primary, a very crowded Democratic primary. She got about 30% of the vote, right? This was Mikey Sherrill, now the governor, gave up her House seat, crowded Democratic primary. There were some interesting dynamics there, but the upshot of it was in the suburbs of New Jersey, West Essex County, Morris County, this type of candidate won the Democratic primary for a special election and then won the seat pretty easily. I think about a 20-point margin she had in the special election over her Republican opponent. So, I mean, again, we're trying to get a sense of what the scope of this is in the Democratic Party. Then the other questions that it raises, and again, I'm just sort of leaving this here as we wait for the numbers to come, but it raises then questions about as these candidacies, if they do start to have success outside of core Democratic areas, like Democratic strongholds, okay, like this district, right? There's no doubt who's going to win this district in November. Whoever wins this Democratic primary tonight is going to win this district. That was true with Chris Rabb. That's true with those districts in New York City where those DSA candidates had success last week. But if and when these Democratic candidates start winning more broadly, and that's why we were looking so closely at this tonight, right? If Gonzalez ever won this tonight, Colorado is still, look, statewide, is still a state that Harris was able to win by 11. In a bad year for Democrats, Kamala Harris was still able to win here by 11 points. So if Gonzalez had beaten Hickenlooper tonight, she certainly would have been favored going into the general election. But, an 11-point statewide margin for Harris is not the same as the 56-point margin I just showed you in that first district. It would have raised the question, could the Republicans make this an interesting race in November had she been nominated tonight, right? These DSA-style candidates, are they able to win in, primaries outside of core Democratic areas? And then if they do, what happens to them in the general election in those places? And you're seeing Gonzalez running kind of basically in the mid-40s here tonight in this primary. And I think we can clearly expect this number to go up and this Hickenlooper number to come down as the remaining vote is counted, because we're that progressive flavor, that DSA flavor of the remaining vote that we've been expecting and we're starting to see. So that's why we were looking so closely, at that. We're going to see, to some extent, Graham Plattner in Maine is a test of this. In Michigan, we've got a Democratic primary for Senate. We're going to be covering August 4th, right? Where there's no big primaries in July. We're going to be off for July, but August 4th, we're coming right back with that Democratic primary for the Senate in Michigan, and a candidate, very sort of ideologically similar here, favored to win that primary. That's a swing state. That's a state Trump won twice. So that's the kind of thing we're kind of looking for here. And then, of course, coming out of 2020, not just the general election this year, what the implications are in the general election this year, but what that means for the Democratic Party as it tries to pick a candidate in 2028. How big, how broad is this movement, and how does that connect with the Democratic nomination for president in 2028? Yes.
I have an update. It's a second update in Weld County, if you want to revisit.
Yep. Okay, so let's take a look here. I'm going to call up the Senate primary Democratic side, Weld County. We're comparing the initial with the current. What do we got?
Hold on. I was in the other race. Okay. So in the initial batch, it was Hickenlooper 59.4, Gonzalez 40.6. In the subsequent batch, it's Hickenlooper 46.9, and Gonzalez 53.2.
How big was that batch?
888 votes.
Yeah. Okay. So again, look, the vast majority of the vote was already counted, and Hickenlooper had built that lead here. So it is what had been 19 for Hickenlooper is 6.5 basically. That's like a 25-point shift here, net 25-point shift in the direction of Gonzalez. Now, there's just not a ton of vote left for her to dent this much more. But you would expect this number, this 41%, probably to rise a couple ticks as the remaining vote comes in. But it's three counties now in this Democratic Senate primary where we've seen the same thing, where we've seen Gonzalez doing markedly better with those second updates. In the Republican gubernatorial primary, I think that's the one you had, right?
Yes. Let me pull it up now.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so it was about 800 votes there as well.
Yep.
Mark Scott, 35% in the initial batch.
Yeah.
Kirkmeyer got 51% in the initial batch. In the subsequent, it's Kirkmeyer with 43.6.
Yeah.
And Marks with about 38%.
So that's actually in give me the full 37 what?
37.98.
Okay, yeah, it is 38. Okay. So that's about 19% of the vote for Bottoms. That's the other thing here. So it had been 16 points for Kirkmeyer, and now it's down to 5.5. So remember, our decision desk said that Marks needed to be doing 4 points better with the 4 points better with the rest of the vote than he did with the initial batch. He lost the initial batch by 16 points to Kirkmeyer. He's losing the subsequent update here currently by 5.5. And again, Bottoms, the other populist kind of MAGA-style candidate, also doing better clearly with the late vote than he did with the initial. And the combined vote share of these two candidates is nearly 60% in this recent update. So just very MAGA flavored. And to the extent there's a problem for Marks, it's only that instead of all of that vote kind of being directed his way here, Bottoms is taking up a big chunk of it too here. But we've seen 3 counties. This is Kirkmeyer's base too. But 3 counties now, and you can see her margin here dwindling now. It's 9,400, where these subsequent updates are giving Marks exactly what he needs.
In this window, while we wait for this next update from Denver, I did send you a message. I'm switching up modes of communication, but just in advance of the next update.
Yes. And let's call right back here because it is 10:26 and 48 seconds, and they have told us 10:30. So let's see if they keep their end of the deal here. But, I don't need to repeat it. We're all looking for the same thing here. It would be, the question is, does something happen? The question is kind of, does something happen that there's no reason to think is about to happen? That would be DeGette doing well with this next update. Everything we're seeing is aligned with this being a good update for Quiros. Three counties now we've gotten statewide where we're starting to get that late vote added in. It is much more progressive flavored. We came into the night expecting, especially in Denver, that it would be. And if it is, then that Quiros number, again, 2,230 is her margin over DeGette. It's 2.3 points. It expands. And it doesn't just expand, but it confirms everything we're saying. And by doing that, it tells us that, again, is there any reason, if this next update comes in like we're kind of thinking it's going to, for Quiros, much better for her than DeGette, really, is there any reason after that to think that that trend is going to reverse at all, as even more late kind of arriving vote is counted? Again, that would also be something there's no reason to expect. So DeGette's got to really pull off some kind of a surprise here with this next update. I see 10:28 and 42 seconds.
After we do this update, we'll do a special report update as well, and we have our Q&A at the end of our broadcast tonight. So those are also elements to stay tuned for.
Yes, get those questions ready, folks. Get the subscription. We gave you the barcode. Get the subscription in. Get the questions in. It's going to be on this same stream. You'll be able to do this Q&A. But yeah, we've called the Democratic gubernatorial race. The Senator Michael Bennet defeated there. It's a nice consolation prize. Gets to go back to the Senate. We've called the Senate primary. Hickenlooper will survive, but his challenger probably getting in the mid 40s right there, which is an interesting thing. We've called the 8th District Democratic primary. Manny Rutenow will be the opponent of Republican Gabe Evans there. And we're waiting on this. We're waiting on the Republican gubernatorial primary where Barb Kirkmeyer has the lead. But boy, if you're her, you are not feeling good right now because you are watching that. That thing is melting away like the Colorado snow in May. Especially the way those updates are coming in there. And so we're waiting on this. And we're waiting on, it's 10:30. So when I say any minute, I mean any minute now. They got that first update, what, Adam? It was at 9, it was within the first 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, and I think it will come in any second.
Any second, folks. 22:30. Remember, does 22:30, does it go up? Does it go up big? There it is. Oh my goodness. There it is. You see it? It was 22:30. We just got our first update of that late vote, and the margin for Quiros over DeGette more than doubled. It was a 2.3-point margin for her. It is now a 4-point. It just doubled. Her raw vote margin and her percentage vote margin both just doubled. And that was in a batch that took us from 65% of the expected vote to 73%. Adam, are you able to calculate? It was clearly extremely pro-Quiros, just how big that margin was for her in that update.
Yeah, she gets 58% in that update, and DeGette gets 36.
36. So a race that the initial vote, we said we thought that initial vote would be the best it gets for DeGette all night, and it would be downhill for her after that. And boy, she needed to lead in that initial vote, and she needed a pad because we said that subsequent, late arriving, late counted vote was likely to be Quiros, and it is. It's extremely pro-Quiros. It was a 2-point margin for Quiros there in the initial. By more than 20 points, she just won that update. That late arriving, late counted vote is everything we suspected it would be. It is very DSA flavored, and it has put Quiros into now a significant lead over DeGette in this race. And again, just there's not a logical reason to think that the next update wouldn't be. Everything we suspected about the nature of this vote is being confirmed. So why would the next one, now which is 90 minutes away, but why would the next one be any different? Should I? No. Okay. We can check it. So folks, I mean, that's going to be our last update there for a long time. So, but that's massive, just in terms of the meaning of what just happened. It's massive. I'll return to it in a second, but I want to just check in here because I just wanted to see, and it did. That Denver update that we just got, look what it did to the map. It's all Hickenlooper. It's all, no. Not in the biggest single place on the board in the Democratic primary in the city of Denver. Julie Gonzalez, Hickenlooper's primary challenger, now leads him citywide. Again, this is not going to reverse the call that we've made or anything like that, but it's again part of that pattern. What just happened to Quiros in the 1st Congressional District happened to Gonzalez in the city of Denver in her statewide race. Are you able, Adam, to see what the break was, Gonzalez-Hickenlooper in that update?
In Denver?
Yeah. I'd just be curious what again, there's a little bit of a difference between the two pools we're talking about here, but there's a ton of overlap. We saw Quiros leading by 22 over DeGette in the new batch there. What was Gonzalez here?
She gets 57% in that recent update.
And it was 43 for Hickenlooper?
That's right.
So 14, and before that it had been like 51-49 Hickenlooper or something?
It was about 50-50.
Yeah, so it's not quite as dramatic. And again, these are two slightly different pools of vote we're talking about, but it's the same basic dynamic. And it does tick Gonzalez up to 43, Hickenlooper 57. And again, it just sets the tone for we've got 80%. I think you can expect this across the board as very, very slowly this thing fills in with more updates. some tonight, a lot in the coming couple of days, that it's not going to change the call. We've made the call here. Hickenlooper's got himself the kind of pad he needed, but the Gonzalez number probably ticks up some because the next wave of vote is going to be better for her than the first, probably across the board here. So again, could that land her at 45%, something like that? Back over here, and again, it's in this first district, not called, but we just you saw it. It doubled. Everything just doubled. So, and let's go back. It's Denver. It didn't do much. I do want to just see what Denver did. Well, the Kirkmeyer number has fallen even more because
we got a Fremont update and an Arapahoe update.
That must be why. Tell me about Arapahoe.
Kirkmeyer wins that batch. It was 1,400 votes.
Uh-huh.
She gets 46%, and Marks gets 32%.
Oh, right. And what was the initial? It was.
The initial was 48% for Kirkmeyer and 33% for Marks.
So she got. Yeah, it was 15 for her over Marks initially, and it only moves 1 point. So she got good news there. That's the first update, right? So that's the first update that kind of breaks with type, and that's what Kirkmeyer needs if she's going to somehow hold on to this, because elsewhere we've been seeing a much better same-day number for Marks, for Bottoms, and much worse for her. Do we have others?
Yeah, Fremont County was the other one that updated there.
Okay, and what do you got?
So that one, we got 3,000 votes in the latest batch of votes, and there was 3,000 in the initial. It was about 50% for Marks in that one, 25% for Kirkmeyer in the initial, and in this latest batch, it was 51% for Marks and 24% for Kirkmeyer.
Oh, okay, so we've seen two now. 25 for Marks, 27. Remember, our decision desk says it's got to be a 4-point improvement for him. So statewide, yeah. So two good updates there if you're Kirkmeyer, and two updates that unlike what we saw initially in Adams County, in Broomfield County, and in Weld County, where clearly that MAGA side was punching above its weight there. She's countered. So some drama there in this Republican gubernatorial primary. Remember that the winner will face the Attorney General Phil Weiser, who knocked off Senator Michael Bennet. And again, this the big outstanding piece of the puzzle. We got to figure out what to do here. We're not due for another update for 90 minutes here.
Yeah.
Our decision desk would
like to see more vote.
So we're not going to have a call here right now.
That's right.
Okay. We are just going to continue to get very incremental, small updates that are going to, on the Democratic side, almost certainly reinforce everything we've been saying here. And yeah, I guess what we're saying, folks, is I can kind of tap dance for the next 90 minutes as we await the next update here. I don't know if you want to. I don't know how much of me you could take. So we may, we've got this Q&A that we want to do on this stream. So what I may do, I think if it makes sense, is we're going to have to. I'll take you through the order of operations here. You can watch this if you want. They're going to have me tape a quick update for our specials, NBC News specials. It's a. I put the professional news voice on and I say what happened. It's like a 90-second thing. So we got to tape that. You can watch me do that if you want, a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. And then I think what we might just do is kind of transition to this subscriber Q&A. I hope you got the QR code. I hope you signed up. There's a million reasons to do it, but I hope you do it in part so that, come on in and join the Q&A. And what I'll do during the Q&A is leave this up. And if anything comes in, because we're just in this phase in Colorado now that really will go on for days of just small updates, coming here and there. But if anything meaningful comes in, we'll have it up and we can talk about it when it happens. But otherwise, we'll just go to that. We'll go to that Q&A. So to kind of reset, I'll just reset here at the headlines. We'll tape this thing and we'll do the Q&A. The headlines, just to go through them one more time: Hickenlooper wins the Democratic primary for a second term in the Senate. Julie Gonzalez, the DSA aligned candidate, probably going to finish here, in the mid 40s. This is probably going to tick up for her. Not enough to, change the call, but a DSA style candidate is probably going to get about 45% of the vote against former governor, current Senator John Hickenlooper in Colorado. So in terms of understanding where the Democratic Party is, there's a data point for you. That's what we learned in the Senate race. In the gubernatorial primary on the Republican side, we are still waiting to see if it's Barb Kirkmeyer, sort of a centrist, moderate figure who nearly won a very competitive congressional election a few years ago, or if it is Victor Marx, who's very much a populist-style, insurgent-style candidate here. We're getting some mixed indicators from the late arriving vote here about whether Marx can cut that gap and overtake Kirkmeyer right there. Again, we have seen Michael Bennet go down in the Democratic primary for governor. One of the questions, one of the points that this raises is how Weiser was able to run against Bennett's status as a longtime Washington figure, longtime United States senator. Trying to say he's too close to that national party you Democratic voters keep saying you don't like. So that's an interesting data point for that discussion that we get out of there. Out of the 8th Congressional District, we now know that Manny Rutinel easily wins the Democratic primary there. You will be hearing that name a ton this fall, just as you will be hearing this name, Gabe Evans, the Republican in that district, renominated without opposition. Again, Trump won it, Trump lost it. The difference, Trump won over Hispanic votes in 2024. This district, 40% Hispanic. Going to be a ton of conversation about that, ton of coverage of that between now and November. And then we're just waiting on this. And again, it's probably 80 minutes from now that we'll get another update. But we just saw an update come in. Quiros won it by 22 points. Quiros doubled her margin over DeGette. Every indication we have, every expectation that we have based on what we've been talking about here tonight and seeing the last few months is there's no real reason to suspect that's going to change with subsequent updates. So if you're Melat Quiros, the Democratic Socialists of America, you're on the cusp here of notching another one and knocking off a 30-year incumbent here, Diana DeGette. And again, it was Pat Schroeder, 72 to 96. DeGette 96. Here we are, 2026, and unless there's something that totally defies all expectations, there's going to be a changing of the guard in this district. Potentially again. So those are the data points. Those are that we have right now. I'm now going to do this NBC News special. I'll put on my serious news voice. Then we'll come back on the other side of that, and we'll head over to we'll transition to this Q&A. So here we go. Yep. This is an NBC News special report. I'm Steve Kornacki. The voters in Colorado hit the polls today, and we've got some results to share with you, starting right here in the United States Senate primary on the Democratic side. John Hickenlooper, first-term incumbent and a former governor of the state, is facing opposition from Julie Gonzalez. Julie Gonzalez, a state legislator who had been aligned with the Democratic Socialists of America prior to entering this campaign. Gonzalez challenging Hickenlooper from the left. Hickenlooper has survived. He has won renomination. He will go to the general election as the Democratic nominee for a second term. But Gonzalez, again, running far to his left, is going to finish this, we expect, with more than 40% of the vote here, again, against a longtime political figure in Colorado. Speaking of longtime political figures in Colorado, the Democratic governor's primary here, Michael Bennet. He's the United States Senator, the other United States Senator. He was looking to trade jobs to become the governor. That will not happen. He's been defeated in Colorado's Democratic gubernatorial primary by Phil Weiser. Phil Weiser, the state attorney general, who sought to make an issue out of Bennett's status as a longtime senator, a figure of Washington, D.C. We've seen polling, Democratic voters saying they are not happy with their party's Washington, D.C. leadership. Weiser trying to attach Bennett to that, apparently having some success in that primary. And then there is this, Colorado's first congressional district. This is in Denver. Diana DeGette, a longtime incumbent, 30-year incumbent, challenged by a socialist, Malat Quiros, backed by the Democratic Socialists of America. There are still votes being tabulated, but you can see Quiros has opened up a lead over DeGette here. The most recently counted votes have been very favorable to Quiros, very bad for DeGette. And so it could be that, again, that socialist fueled faction of the Democratic Party that we have seen post some big wins in Democratic primaries recently, they may be able to post another one here in Colorado's first district against a longtime incumbent there, Diana DeGette. Again, with still some votes to be tabulated there and no final result from our decision desk at this hour. Thanks for watching this special report. More news is straight ahead on NBC News Now and on NBCNews.com. I'm Steve Kornacki. Have a great evening. Good? Okay. All right, folks. So there it is. That's the NBC special report. We had the tape. You got to watch that. Nothing, Adam, let me just check with you. Nothing has come in the last 5 minutes here sizable?
Nothing sizable. We got another update out of Boulder, but that's about it.
And it just tell me the Boulder update was more of what we've seen, progressive, socialist, doing better.
Doing better, yeah. Hickenlooper won that recent batch by a few dozen votes.
Right, and he'd been up by about 16, I think, before
That's right.
that. Yeah. So again, it's about a 15, 20 point shift in the DSA direction with one more update there. So folks, we've gone through it. I'm sorry we don't have a call to share with you during this live stream of the first district, but again, you know it's about an hour 10 away or so. You'll get another update from Denver. You can certainly see where the trend is right there, though. And so we figured this is probably a good time to start doing the Q&A that we talked about. So I hope you'll join us for that. So most of the results are in. We now have time for a few questions from our NBC News subscribers. And let's see what we've got. I think I've got them. How was that for a transition? Let's see what we got. Okay. This thing just lit up. Hank B. from Colorado says, "Hey, Steve, I'm a big numbers guy. What kind of lead would it take to call District 1? Oh, okay. So let's pick up right where we left off. Well, I can't give you the exact answer to that because I'm not the decision desk. But what the decision desk has told us, and if you were watching, you might have seen this earlier from Adam Naboa relaying an update that they wanted to see more vote. They were talking about seeing more than 80% of the vote before being comfortable making a call. It did just jump in that last update. Again, they're doing these every 90 minutes. So the last update took us from 65% expected to 73% expected. We're about an hour 10 away from the next scheduled update. If we get the same kind of batch, that would take it to 81%. And at least on that threshold, that's something our decision desk has said they would like to get there. Now, again, I get so nervous if it makes it sound like I'm speaking for the decision desk. I'm not. But that next update, you can see if it looks like the one we just got did, and there's no reason to think it won't, then this Kyros lead expands further, and potentially you get to that 80% threshold right there. But again, that's not going to be till probably midnight East Coast time. Thank you, Hank B, for the question. What do we got here? Jack F, Maryland, says, if you could only cover one race on election night, which one would you pick? It's a great question, Jack. What is the race that if I saw it, I would feel like I know where things went for the night? I want to get, Adam, I want to get your answer to this one too. Because I'm mainly saying that because I'm trying to think of one. So I want to shift the spotlight to you for a second while I come up with a good answer. Do you have an answer?
I don't know. I mean, we just had the new polling in Texas. We just had new polling in Maine. These are the ones I'm thinking about. I was thinking about Alaska, but I think it's a unique electorate up there. I'm just thinking about some of these Senate races. Maybe stick me in Ohio.
You took it I shouldn't have gone to you. Why did I do that? I was exactly where I wanted to go. I think Ohio's a great answer. Because I think it's sort of like this. To me, it's sort of the, it's been kind of the fool's gold for Democrats since 2016 in some ways. Whether it was, you got to remember, things change so quickly we forget. 2016, 2020, both years, we talked about Ohio as a swing state. Both years we saw polling. I remember in 2020 polling that showed Joe Biden ahead in some polling in Ohio right before that election. I've seen Democrats in 16, in 20, in 22 with J.D. Vance, in 2024 with Sherrod Brown running again. Always say, this is the year of the Democrats. This is the year we get Ohio back, and these voters have turned, and it keeps not happening. And so here it is. It's Sherrod Brown running again. You're hearing the same kind of talk. And if it ends up being a comfortable win for Husted there, then I might extrapolate from that a lot of the sort of the extra the Democrats have been hoping for is not there.
And it's one of these places too where there's different types of the electorate, and we're talking about whether it's Cincinnati or Columbus, some of these more urban settings, or white working class voters, rural, that we're trying to get a check-in of where they are at the midterm.
The Mahoning Valley, yeah. Can Sherrod Brown win back anything there, or is that just totally gone for Democrats? What else do we have here? Logan G, New Jersey. Logan G, New Jersey says, are any DSA-backed Democratic nominees considered vulnerable in the general election? Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, right? The terminology. Who is formally backed by the DSA? Who's a DSA style? Who's DSA kind of aligned? Can I navigate to Michigan, or am I going to? Do we have the candidates in there for the primary, or
we don't have the upcoming primary, but you have historical results in there.
I mean, maybe I'll leave it. You all know Michigan. Trump won it in 2016. Biden won it in 2020. Trump won it back in 2024. And to me, I think that's shaping up to be the test here, this year at least, of this style of politics. I would say this DSA style of politics. Currently the front runner in the Democratic primary there. We'll see what happens August 4th. We're gonna be live for that one. Believe me. But Al Sayed, the front runner there, if he does win the nomination, is going to be trying to win a statewide election in a place that Trump carried twice, with this roughly style of politics. And there's some demographic features to that, I think, that are interesting too. There is, we talk in Michigan we talked in 2024 about the Arab American vote, the Muslim American vote, issues of the Gaza war, how Trump was able to sort of take advantage of a lot of divisions that existed there on the Democratic side. I think one of the questions here, as the Democrats through these primaries have been moving, and this would be the case in Michigan, as their party's posture towards Israel is changing. Is that going to affect them with Jewish voters in Michigan? I say that because we saw in a special election for the House in New Jersey earlier this year, again, where a DSA-style candidate, Ana Lilia Mejia, who had very much gone hard after Israel in her campaign, in her rhetoric, she won the special election easily, but she actually posted very bad numbers for a Democrat in two parts of the district that have very heavy Jewish populations that are overwhelmingly typically Democratic, and that took a big step away from the Democratic Party with Mejia as the nominee. Would something like that happen in Michigan? And would it be more costly for Democrats in Michigan? Because again, the district I'm talking about in New Jersey is an overwhelmingly now Democratic district. Michigan as a state is not an overwhelmingly Democratic state. So that's an interesting. Michigan to me is shaping up potentially as the test this year potentially. Have I said potentially enough? What else we got here? Jack F gave us two. Jack, I got to spread the wealth here. I just knocked the microphone off. Tyler M, Pennsylvania. Hey Steve, Texas Senate race. Does Tallarico need to win Latino voters by Clinton 2016 margins or Obama 2012 margins? Somewhere in between. What's your thought? Well, the 2016 Clinton numbers with Latinos weren't that far off the Obama 2012 numbers. Where things really changed was starting in 2020. Texas was one of those places. South Florida, Miami-Dade County, and then deep South Texas along the border are the places in 2020 where you saw those biggest jumps there for Trump with Hispanic voters. And then that obviously expanded and continued in 2024. But I think, and in 2018, is a long way of saying this had not yet really happened in 2018. And if you remember in 2018, Beto O'Rourke didn't win in Texas, but he lost to Ted Cruz by 3 points. That's as good as it's gotten for Democrats in one of these marquee statewide races in like 32 years in Texas, was Beto O'Rourke in 2018. I'd say, obviously, the Democrats need to get back to something like that. But the other thing they need to do is the other thing that happened in Texas in 2024 that I think surprised a lot of people was Democrats had been making some steady gains in like the bedroom communities of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, even in the Houston area, and those things it just evaporated in 2024. The Democrats, all of this territory they had been incrementally claiming in the bedroom communities were supposed to be the party's sort of the key to the party's demographic future in Texas, and actually flipping it, they just washed away. So they got to win that. They've got to get those gains back. I don't think it's just a question of deep South Texas. There was a poll there today. If you're watching this, you probably saw the poll. Tallarico tied 47-47 with Ken Paxton. And there's two ways to look at the poll, right? Like if you're a Democrat, you're excited. You're tied in Texas, right? Like the number in there though that I keyed in on was underneath, and that was the favorable, unfavorable rating of each candidate. Now Paxton has been a lightning rod figure in Texas politics for more than a decade now. Was impeached by the Republican legislature, not convicted, but there were Republicans who voted, to impeach him. And long way of saying, I mean, there's been a lot of attention on how he's not, from a general election standpoint, an ideal candidate, and that bears out in this poll. He's got like a 50% 50% unfavorable rating from Texas voters statewide. And the Tallarico unfavorable number is 39. Is it 37 or 39? I don't mean to interrupt you because I know you're looking at results. It's 37 or 39. Long way of saying, if you're a Republican, you might take heart from that poll because you've got a flawed nominee with a 50% unfavorable rating, and you're tied. You don't want to be tied, but has Tallarico given you, in some of these pronouncements that have started to get some attention, has he given you the kind of ammunition and the kind of material that could take that 39% unfavorable rating and move that well into the 40s, get it closer to where Paxton's already is and has been for a long time? I mean, if that's where you're starting out as Republicans in Texas, that's if you're a Republican, that's the optimistic take. You're 47-47 with maybe more room to tarnish your opponent than there is room to tarnish your already tarnished nominee. Of course, if you're a Democrat, it's 47-47 and you're running against somebody with a 50% unfavorable rating in a year when the climate might favor Democrats, all things being equal. You'll take that too if you're a Democrat right now. What else do we have here? Audrey J., North Carolina. Thank you, Audrey, for the question. Thank you for subscribing. What could this primary be predictive of for wider primaries and electoral trends as we go into the midterm season? Well, yeah, Audrey, I mean, I think it's this primary tonight here in Colorado, to me, is, again, it's just about the temperature within the Democratic Party. We really just, clearly, wherever this finally lands, it's clearly answered the question, this DSA-style energy. It's not just a New York City thing that we all made a big deal about last week because it happened in the media capital of the world. It's New York City. We've seen it in Philadelphia. We've seen it in D.C. You've seen it out in Seattle. Now you're seeing it in Denver. Again, it's a thing that in areas where you have a lot of young voters, a lot of renters, college degrees, political progressivism, all those sorts of things, that DSA flavor has a lot of room to run. It also has a fair amount, and I'll just show it to you, right? Where do we stand right now in the Senate race? This is a DSA-aligned candidate, Julie Gonzalez, against a fixture in Colorado politics. She's going to lose, but statewide, you're getting outside of just Denver here. Statewide, she's probably going to finish in the mid-40s here. So there is a little bit more breadth to this than just being a phenomenon of Denver, of New York City, of Seattle, of Washington, D.C. But like I said, she didn't win tonight, so we won't get that test in Colorado. I think a candidate like Plattner in Maine, I think a candidate like Al Sayed in Michigan, I think these are the candidates I'm going to be looking at if they are both the candidates this November as sort of a test in competitive states of, are you seeing Democrats pay some kind of price for that, or are they not? But in a district like this, again, where this is just an overwhelmingly Democratic district, this is just about that, what's going on inside the Democratic Party, and again, what that's going to mean in the years ahead. And what else we got here? Connor E., Wisconsin. How comparable is this left insurgency to the Tea Party movement on the right, extrapolated out from what we've seen this far, if necessary? Yeah, no, I think that I think the Tea Party comparison, is very apt. I mean, one of the things you started seeing, with the Tea Party, 2010, is when it started to happen in these Republican primaries. Candidates who sort of, who came from outside the traditional political infrastructure, had backgrounds, they're sort of non-traditional political backgrounds, who brought with them considerable baggage from things they said, either had said before or said, on the campaign trail, whether because they were, undisciplined candidates, not being political lifers, they weren't used to, what it's like to be in the spotlight every day, or they just were saying what they believed. This started happening, and in 2010, 2012, there were plenty of primaries in deep, deep red districts where Tea Party candidates won. And because the districts were deep, deep red, they had no problem then winning in the general election. Sort of like we're talking about here in Colorado's 1st district. And Mela Quiros, I mean, we won't enumerate it all here. If you're watching this, you know, and there'll be plenty of discussion on this in the days ahead. But Mela Quiros has said some very, very controversial things. They are not going to stop her from winning this district in November. But, you know, Mela Quiros, Chevalier in New York last week, has also said some incredibly, incredibly controversial things. A thing that happened, I think, with the Tea Party was as those candidates started to emerge and win nationally, I think it did start to affect the image of the Republican Party. And one of the long-term trends in American politics that had already begun before the Tea Party became a thing was that more kind of politically and culturally moderate, college-educated suburbanites who once upon a time were Republican voters because of like pocketbook issues. They wanted lower taxes, that sort of thing. They looked at that Republican Party and started to identify it with these Tea Party style candidates in the Tea Party movement. And they had been becoming uncomfortable with the Republican Party for other reasons. This hastened their departure from the Republican Party into and that's been the story of the last decade and a half, right? How many times have we talked about college-educated suburbanites, you know, in metro areas just getting overwhelmingly Democratic, changing politics of regions, of states? I think the rise of the Tea Party on the Republican side hastened that, okay? Now, talking about candidates like Quiros, talking about candidates like Chevalier in New York, as if they do, candidates like this continue to spring up, get elected in numbers like you were seeing with Tea Party candidates in 2010, 2012. Are there voters who start to say this is the Democratic Party? Are there voters who have been becoming uneasy with the Democratic Party who would look at this and, like those voters I'm describing who hastened their departure from the Republican Party because of the Tea Party, would they hasten their departure from the Democratic Party because of candidates like this? I could think of voters who that might apply to. We're talking about the working class voters whose defection, who were traditionally, not that long ago, the suburbs were Republican and the blue-collar working-class voters were Democrats. We've been seeing that the coalition switch there. And the twist that we saw in 2024 was that blue-collar voter, it wasn't just a blue-collar white voter who was moving away from the Democratic Party. In 2024, this was a multiracial blue-collar voter who was moving away from the Democratic Party, especially Hispanic, blue-collar Hispanic voters. Are those voters going to be uncomfortable with this type of this sort of strain of progressivism as it kind of emerges on the Democratic side? Because again, we're seeing indications in a lot of these races that the core strength of these DSA-style candidates is college-educated voters. It's not working class professionals, college-educated voters. So that's maybe a parallel I could see playing out. We'll see if it does. That's a possibility that's raised by this. Are we okay? Because I think about I want to end on this one. There's one more. Alexandra F., New York. Would you chuck it all and live on a boat? No, boats sink. Sometimes in shark-infested waters. But would I chuck it all and live somewhere else? I got a vision in my head. I'm not sharing it with you. The answer is yes. And as I tell Adam, one of these weekends, I'm going to hit the pick six at a track, and I'm going to hit it for so much money. I'm going to send him a postcard. He's never going to see me again. Haven't done it yet. Okay, folks. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for tuning in to the live stream. We got nothing else major while we were on. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So again, if you're a junkie and if you're watching this, you certainly are. You know, at about midnight, check in on Denver and see if everything we expect to happen happens, and see if that leads to a thing being up on this screen. You could do that at NBCnews.com. We got real-time results pages right there. Everything that's going into this board is going up there. The minute there's a check mark in this board, it appears there. So again, midnight, they've been keeping to it pretty well. Denver will have that update if you want to follow the story to its conclusion. Meanwhile, you've been watching these. It's been so great. We are taking vacation. There's nothing on the calendar for July. But like I said, and like I was just starting to tease there, August 4th, we come back. The primaries come back in a huge way. Michigan, the headline that night. By no means, though, is that the only event, but Michigan will be the marquee event that night. We've also got, look, Florida's going to be August 18th. September 1st, Senator Ed Markey getting a challenge in the Democratic primary from Seth Moulton, Congressman. We'll be doing that. New Hampshire, September 8th. Look at me, I'm a New Englander. I told him we got to get Mass and New Hampshire on there. We did. So that's what's coming up. So, folks, we're going to call it a night there. You could be like me and go home and just make sure that next update looks the same. We'll keep an eye on that at NBCnews.com. And thank you and enjoy July.